What's up, everybody? This is the Booch, and welcome to episode 6 of the Boochcast reviews, Darkside of the 2000s. And of course, I am back again, ladies and gentlemen, with my very good friend who is now on the road, a weary traveler coming back from a hard day of having people sing who shouldn't be allowed to sing. But, ladies and gentlemen,
including myself.
The one and only Mr. Derek Shapiro is here, and we are here for, last week he was here to talk about the rise of the shock jocks of the radio world. As you guys know, Derek and I have a lot of experience in the radio world. We've both cut our teeth in radio before we started doing our own internet shows here. And today we're here to talk about the fall of the shock jocks. So now, this time we're going to talk about how all the shock jock world came to an end, all the crazy shit that finally made it go bye-bye. And I guess there's nothing left to do now but just to get it started, because by the 2000s, shock jocks have waged war for 2 decades on the FM dial. At this point, Howard Stern was wiping out the competition, except for Mancow, who was the last one standing. Pretty much him and Opie and Anthony were the only ones that Stern hadn't taken out yet. Then the government dials up charges of indecency after Nipplegate.
Nipplegate.
Yeah, that's what they call the incident between Justin Timberlake and Janet Jackson at the Super Bowl.
Yes. Oh, that was exciting because, I have a crush on Janet Jackson. But, they were playing my favorite team, the New England Patriots.
Yes, they were in that Super Bowl. Now, because of Nipplegate, the king of all media and his fearless challengers blast off terrestrial radio for the new frontier, satellite radio. And that's what we're going to get into now. The transition to satellite radio, which was created because of the FCC going out of control and getting to a point where it was making radio unenjoyable for people. So they wanted to go to satellite radio where there's no FCC guidelines and they can say and do whatever the fuck they damn well please. And satellite radio's freedoms will unleash its biggest stars. But their no more rules battle for dominance will end up destroying shock jock radio for good. So that was the price, was that the shock jocks got drunk with power and basically it self-imploded. Now the FCC exists to stop free speech. That's basically what the FCC is for. And Howard Stern said it's turning into goddamn communism with these idiots. And Derek, I think you and I can both agree Howard's right on this one.
Right.
I've never believed in the FCC because I'm a free speech person. I very much believe in the First Amendment. It's why I got into comedy. It's why I love doing internet radio. It's why I say what I say and do what I do on the Boochcast. Even though some people might get offended, I don't give a fuck. I have that mentality because I've always said the day I can no longer speak my mind doing the Boochcast is the day I shut the show down. I will retire and shut it down. If a day ever came where I can't speak my mind on my own show, then I don't want to do the show anymore. Simple as that.
Okay.
That's how serious I am about free speech. And I've always said, if I was the president of the United States, one of my first things in office would be to abolish the FCC. They would be gone. They would be destroyed. I would cancel them out completely. Because my rule is simple. You know what I would use to govern the speech?
What?
The fucking parents. That's your fucking job.
The FCC is good for the banking. Get rid of the radio, but don't get rid of it for the banking.
In the fall of 2004, the 2 competing satellite radio stations, Sirius and XM, threaten terrestrial radio's future. One that grows much dimmer when Howard Stern announces he will take his show to satellite in just over a year. So during this time, Sirius and XM are 2 completely different stations.
Now they're the same.
Today, a lot of people see Sirius XM radio because eventually they do merge together. But in the 2000s, they were separate stations. One was Sirius, one was XM, and they were competing against each other. They had the same goal. They were just run by different companies. But Howard's not the first shock jock to make the jump to satellite radio. Because a lot of people are under the misconception that Howard Stern was the first to do this. He wasn't.
Opie and Anthony.
It was Opie and Anthony, yes. They were Howard's disciples turned haters, and they were already broadcasting on XM because they were kept off radio for 2 years because of the sex contest they had. Couple who had anal sex in the vestibule near the cathedral, and they got arrested. So they were kept off the air for 2 years because of that incident. So they're sitting at home. And, of course, Opie and Anthony, they responded to Howard Stern like, how does it feel, fuckhead? 5 years of crap he gave us. They're calling him a tool. And they were the ones that jumped on there. Now, how is this to take his raunchy radio show to satellite is helped along by something that happened 9 months earlier at Super Bowl 38, because that was a Super Bowl where the Nipplegate took place. And the game airs on CBS, which is owned by Viacom, the same company that owns the Howard Stern radio show.
Wow.
So Viacom owns all of this. And Justin Timberlake and Janet Jackson were performing, and he was singing his song, Rock Your Body, which was one of his popular songs at the time. And of course, there's a verse in there. Now, originally, Justin Timberlake had a different girl on the album. There's a girl that says, talk to me, boy. Like, talk to me, boy.
Talk to me, boy.
Yeah, like that. Only much better. And Justin would say, like, no disrespect. I don't mean no harm. I can't wait to get you in my arms. Hurry up, because you're taking too long. And at the end of it goes, better have you naked by the end of this song. And that's the verse in the song that he wrote in there. Now, because Janet is on stage with Justin, Janet's doing the talk to me boy line, and they're doing the dancing like singers do. Like, obviously they're not dating, but they're still doing the freak dancing to get the crowd going and everything else, because sex sells. Correct. We all know. But they're doing it tastefully. It's not too over the top, but it's done enough to where it's so in the guidelines. But then Justin does the whole, better have you naked by the end of this song. And all of a sudden, that's when they have the wardrobe malfunction, and Janet's left tit is exposed to the audience. Woo! And here's the thing, because of that verse, I'll have you naked by the end of this song, that's why people think in the beginning that they planned this, which is bullshit. They didn't plan that.
Shit. When you were talking about this, I just cummed.
Okay. Good to know.
That made me fucking horny, okay? I don't know about you, but I'm telling you, just thinking about that as I'm driving, OMG. You want to see my West End over here? Oh, never mind. Okay.
Yeah. And here's the thing. For those of you who may not know, as someone who watched that Super Bowl live and remembers it, and
I do.
You saw it live too, right? So you'll back me up
on
it. When the tit was exposed, what was it, like a couple seconds that it was out there?
Yeah.
Like, it's one of those things where, like, if you blink, you missed it, right? Like, you almost didn't believe you saw a tit. You're almost like, was that her tit? What the hell? I didn't even know that her tit was exposed until the next day when it was all over the fucking news. Like, I didn't even notice it. It was one of those things where if you blinked, you missed it.
Where was Janet Jackson's control?
And it's actually kind of funny because a couple of years ago, Justin Timberlake came back to the Super Bowl show, and when he got to the Rock Your Body song, he stopped and went, and kind of like trolled the fans. And a lot of people were giving Justin Timberlake hate because they hate the fact that he was able to come back to the Super Bowl, but Janet Jackson hasn't been anywhere near it since.
I agree with that because Justin should have got more blame. Janet shouldn't have got all the blame. Now, speaking about CBS, okay, at the time, okay, Howard Stern's friend, David Letterman, who was on CBS, also owned by Viacom, did you see the fucking awesome interview that David Letterman did with Janet Jackson?
No, I didn't see that.
Oh, it's still on YouTube. You gotta see that, Vinny. Oh, my God. David Letterman was keep asking the questions, and Janet Jackson was so embarrassed, okay?
Well, yeah.
And again, she got interviewed on CBS, the same network it happened. David Letterman was keep asking the questions. He was like nervous at the same time. You could tell he was nervous. Every time David Letterman interviewed Janet Jackson, he was nervous. And I remember during the one interview, I don't know if it was that one or another thing, she told that Michael Jackson says, just be quiet, end it. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, and I also found out later, Janet said the same thing to Justin. Like, the reason Justin Timberlake wasn't being vocal, because everybody got mad that he felt he should have stood up for Janet. Janet was the one who actually told him, just don't worry about it, stay quiet, don't bring it up. Like, Janet was the one who told Justin to shut up because he felt like there was nothing she could have done. So he was like, okay, I won't say nothing. But that's why Justin got heat, because they felt like he wasn't standing up for Janet. But he said, Janet told me not to say anything. Because Janet was embarrassed. Never mind the fact that her tit was exposed and she didn't want it. Because Janet, contrary to popular belief, Janet Jackson, she's not Cardi B. She's not Sexy Red. I mean, she's a sexual female singer, but she's not one of those people that's going to rip off her clothes in front of the crowd or do an OnlyFans or talk about her wet-ass pussy or any of that bullshit. That's not what the singer Janet was. Janet did sexual stuff, but she was tasteful with her sexuality. She did it in a tasteful way to where there was still some mystery. Like, the closest thing she did was, like, I saw this one concert, some of it's on YouTube, where she'll pick out a guy in the crowd and, like, tie him up to an elevated table thing, and she'll straddle the guy. They're fully clothed. but she'll straddle the guy and sing. And it's obviously there's consent, like she's picking out a guy in the crowd and doing this. And it's such a great like moment. Like, and every guy is envious of the dude on the table. But she does stuff like that. But again, it's all done tastefully. So
I'm coming right now. Forget about it.
some of you are probably wondering, Vinny, why are you not coming from this? Because I had the decency to jerk off before we got on the air. But the thing is, and the reason it was embarrassing for Janet, though, was not just the fact that her tit was exposed and she's not that type of singer, but the fact that the entire fucking world was coming down on Janet Jackson like she's the most deplorable human being in the world. Keep in mind, these are the same people that look at the Cardi B's and the Megan Thee Stallions of the world and go, they're so brave and empowering. It's like, fuck you.
Exactly.
There's not a damn thing empowering about these bitches. Janet Jackson was empowering.
Yes,
okay?
she was.
Yeah, so the Janet Jackson wardrobe malfunction will not only titillate teens, but will also arouse the government to act. With their livelihoods at risk, terrestrial radio shock jocks unite in their mission to protect free speech. Now, that's how crazy it got. The shock jock people that were all competing against each other, were taking shots at each other, going after each other, are now banding together as one. It's like, hey, we're going to put aside our differences and join forces against the common enemy, which is the FCC. It's like, look, we got to bury the hatchet, take them down, and then go back to competing. And a guy we talked about last week, Mancow was a major target of the FCC and was also a strong advocate for free speech to the point where he has free speech first tattooed on his shoulder. And he even showed it in the interview. When you watch the Darkside 2000 episode, he actually unbuttons his shirt and shows the tattoo that he still has to this day that says free speech first. So Mancow is very much an advocate of free speech, which makes me respect him even more than I already did going into this. Now, even the king of all media, Howard Stern, is feeling the heat when Clear Channel pulls him from several stations until he clears up his act. So now Howard is still on the air, but he's losing his syndication. Like, there are different stations in different states that are like, we're pulling him off. And that's when they all decide to band together. And as the radio bad boys gear up to battle the FCC, Congress drags Viacom CEO Mel Karmazin before them to answer questions. And this is where they show a clip. And I definitely want to talk about this quote because this really got to me. There's a woman named Heather Wilson. Those of you who may not know, she is a Republican from New Mexico.
Right.
She's a Republican from New Mexico. And this is what she says to Mel when he comes before Congress. She says, the playground at our elementary school should have been a buzz with talk of the Patriots and their great moves on the field, not the moves of some disrobing rock star. You knew what you were doing and you wanted us all to be a buzz here in this room and on the playground in my kid's school because it improves your rating and it lines your pockets. Now, I know how I feel about this. Derek, you have any thoughts?
Well, so question. Did Howard and Mancow actually have a truce?
No.
Did Opie and Anthony and Howard Stern have a truce?
Not to my knowledge, no.
So how did they all come together?
They were going up before Congress. So it was kind of like they were all coming together. They were all being called in. They were basically forming some type of team to go after them. But it's not like they were all hanging out and being buddy-buddy. So the truth was in the sense of, hey, we're going to go after the FCC. But when we go before the FCC, we're not going to take shots at each other. We're going to handle this situation so they'll take us seriously.
So just like how me and your former co-host came together because of that one Congress guy that got shot, we came together on the same show, just like that.
Yeah, you came on the show to talk about that one thing, and while you were on the show, you were respectful, but he still hated you, and you still hated him during that time. So it was kind of that thing. It was a civilized moment. But my issue with this, the reason this made me so fucking angry is because, and people are probably shocked because you think, oh, Vinny's a conservative, so he automatically sides with the conservative. Not always. I mean, if you give me a choice between a Republican or a Democrat, 9 times out of 10, I'm going to side with the Republican because the Democrats today have lost their goddamn mind. But just because I side with Republicans doesn't mean I buy into all the things they say. If I hear stupid shit, I'm still going to call it out. And this is what Heather did that bothered me. And politicians do this all the time, and it makes me angry, is whenever they have a problem with something, whenever they want to attack something, whenever they want to deem something immoral or invaluable, they try to use the children to guilt trip people. Like they're talking about, oh, the kids saw this. It was an outrage. outrage the kids were talking about it. Let me tell you something. If the kids were talking about this,
Right.
it's because their parents wouldn't shut up about it. Second of all, I don't know any elementary school kids that actually watches football. I can't speak for, I just know me in elementary school. I didn't have the attention span to sit and watch a football game when I was in elementary school. Most of the time when adults would watch Super Bowl, they don't have the kids in the room because they're noisy, they're annoying. Sunday night, go to bed, like get out of the room. I've never known anybody, an elementary school kid, that would sit and watch a football game.
Well, I get a point though, because the kid did watch the halftime. That is Janet Jackson and Justin Timberlake, because they're icons to them, you know, like from NSYNC, bye, 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 you know, and Janet Jackson with, if I was your girl, the things I'd do to you, you know. And the thing is, I can see the kids watching the halftime. But the thing is, they gotta watch these stuff because kids should know what a breast looks like by age of 10.
Well, yeah, you know what it is, but you still don't want your kids watching it. But here's the point. It's your job to parent your kids. That's why the dumbest thing I ever heard parents say during this whole ordeal was, how am I supposed to explain this to my kids? If you're a parent and you don't know how to explain someone's clothes coming off accidentally or a breast being exposed, if you don't know how to explain that to a kid, you have no business being a parent. How
You know what the funny thing is?
a parent are you that you can't explain this shit? I mean, I even hear parents that are like, where do babies come from? And you all fucking wig out and panic. They get mad at sex ed classes in schools and say, I want to be the one to teach my kids about sex. You guys freak out the thought of even mentioning sex, yet you want to teach it to your kids. And you give bad information because you're afraid to tell kids what sex really is. Like it's a complicated situation. It's only complicated because you make it complicated because deep down, you don't want your kid to know about it. It's a simple fucking thing to explain to a kid. Okay, why was her breast out? There was an accident. That shouldn't have happened. No kid is gonna get traumatized by seeing Janet Jackson hit for 4 or 5 freaking seconds.
Let's talk about sex, baby. Let's talk about you and me. Let's talk about all the good things and all the bad things that may be.
Yeah, because here's the thing. If y'all would have just shut the fuck up about it, I guarantee you the kids wouldn't have noticed. They would have went right back to the fucking game. You know why? Because kids have a short attention span and a football game is really fucking long. You had a whole second half of football to play. By the time they got to the end of the third quarter, they're not even going to remember the fucking halftime show. Elementary school kid. Now, the middle and high school kids, they're probably going to remember. But elementary school, fuck off. Fuck off. They're not going to notice. They're not going to care because they're not that fucking smart back then. Now, kids today, I don't know. They're dealing with a whole other set of fucked up problems. Seeing a tit's the least of their fucking worries in 2024.
You know what astonishes me? CBS, the same network that complained about it, later on they had 2.5 Men, the most raunchy show with Charlie Sheen.
Yeah, which we're going to talk about that actually in 2 weeks. Come back when Zach and I talk about that. Now, according to Lee Abrams, satellite radio has no rules, no commercials, and no censorship. The mandate was to pioneer a new format, but they were careful to not offer anything you could already get on terrestrial radio. That's how different they wanted to be. Basically, whatever was on terrestrial radio that you could get there, they didn't want to put on there because they wanted to give people an incentive to get satellite radio and tune in because they wanted to be as different as possible. So they had no rule. Back then, there was no commercials. It was all commercial free and no censorship. That's why they made money off subscriptions. So instead of having to rely on sponsorship, they would just get subscription fees, and those subscription fees would be used to fund the company and pay things and whatever. That was part of their strategy. Now, terrestrial radio was stagnant and stale, but it's also still home to radio's biggest stars. Lee knows he needs to convince one of them to make the move to satellite. So he begins with FM radio's biggest name, Howard Stern.
Yeah.
So XM reached out to Howard first before Sirius did. Now, during a meeting with Abrams, the XM CEO, Howard, and his manager. So that's the 4 people that are at this meeting. Abrams is there with the XM CEO, and Howard is there with his business manager. Because obviously, his business manager is going to be there to manage and work out the deal. Because usually when you deal with celebrities, you deal with their people. So the manager's going to be there. Now, at first, Howard loves the idea, but the XM CEO makes the mistake of comparing what Howard does on the air to his old rival, Don Imus. And Howard felt so insulted, he turned down the offer. Howard was so offended that this man compared him to Don Imus that he declined the offer and walked out. So XM fails to sign Howard Stern because the CEO said something stupid. So when Lee fails to sign Howard, a new plan is born to bring FM radio Radio's two biggest pariahs back from the dead, Opie and Anthony. So that's how Opie and Anthony became the first to make the jump. Because when Howard turned it down, they brought in Opie and Anthony because of how popular they were.
Right.
Now, here's the kicker, though. When XM Radio comes calling, Opie and Anthony were off the air for 2 years. They were considered damaged goods. They were being paid to sit at home, and they basically did nothing, especially with each other. They didn't hang out. They didn't grab lunch. For 2 years, these guys didn't see each other.
Wow.
So that's how bad their friendship got. They weren't even speaking. And their falling out had its roots back on their FM radio show when Anthony's marriage broke up over a fan named Melinda. That's what caused them to have tension. She first comes on the air, Melinda, to save a lobster. Apparently there was a lobster that was going to be boiled or killed or whatever. And she saved the lobster by giving a sexual favor to a crew member. Basically, suck this guy's dick and this lobster won't die or whatever. She would come on the show and show her boobs, and Anthony became obsessed with her.
That wants to know angle on seafood. Where's my lobster when I need it?
She went from seafood to seamen.
Ah,
Yeah.
yes.
And he even said his wife helped select the nude pics they put on the website. So Anthony's still married, but his wife also finds her attractive. So Anthony's not cheating on his wife. Now, Melinda, she gets a nickname on the show. Like we mentioned before, when you're on radio, you get a nickname. Her nickname was Lobster Girl. That's what they called her on the show.
Woo! Would you put tartar sauce on a lobster girl to eat it on her vagina?
No, I wouldn't.
I would.
Now known as Lobster Girl, Anthony and his wife are soon doing more than just looking at her photos. They eventually end up having threesomes. Now, him and his wife are having a three-way with Lobster Girl. Like they're getting together on the regular and having threesomes now. This eventually led to Anthony's divorce. So I think it was one of those things where in the beginning, it was becoming enjoyable, but I think maybe it was happening so much that the wife was getting tired of it. Like, okay, I think we're overdoing this. And eventually, Anthony gets divorced. Now, after they get divorced, Anthony starts dating Melinda, and he's happy in this new relationship. But Opie is not happy. And the reason he's not happy is because Anthony would bring Melinda to this radio station every day.
Really?
Yeah. Basically, when they were dating, Anthony would have her in the station every day, and Opie would get annoyed. It's like, look, dude, I get you're in love and everything, but we got a fucking show to do, and she's distracting. It's like the Yoko Ono situation. Like, get Yoko out of here. We got to fucking rehearse.
Right.
And Opie wouldn't look at her, and he was downright rude. He goes to his agent and says, I quit. I can't do this anymore. I'm done. I don't want to do this show anymore. And his agent said, are you crazy? You're about to become millionaires. Is there anything we can do to salvage this? And Opie says, well, there's this guy we worked with named Jim Norton. And that's how Jim Norton got hired on Opie and Anthony. He was brought in to be a buffer between Opie and Anthony. Because you notice when they come back to XM Radio, Jim Norton becomes an official member of the show. Like he's not just a comedian making appearances. He legit is on the show. He gets a salary, a contract. He's a legit radio personality on the show. And the reason they did that was because he provided the buffer between Opie and Anthony because Opie was ready to quit. So if it wasn't for Jim Norton, Opie and Anthony, they'd have been done already.
Are they friends now?
Not really. I mean, Anthony has a podcast now. We're going to get to that a little bit later. And I think Opie was a guest on the show, so they might not be friends, but they're civilized again.
They're not doing a show anymore together?
No, but we'll get to why later. So on October 4th, 2004, Jim Norton joins Opie and Anthony when they launched a new show on XM Satellite Radio. The threesome immediately unleashed an offensive barrage against Howard Stern and his family. So that's their first official act, is to fire at Howard Stern because they've been waiting. They've been laying in the wings, waiting to go after Howard. And now that they're no longer working under the same company, they can mention his name anytime they want now. So this is a direct quote again from Opie and Anthony. I saw a picture of him hanging out with a couple of his daughters, and one's just got the biggest set of tits on her. Big Jewish tits, right? Yeah, go drive her off to college. You know what happens there? Legs akimbo in the dorm room. Oh, you're Howard's daughter, aren't you? So now they're going after Howard. They're going after his kids now. 2 days later, Howard upstages Opie and Anthony's resurgence by announcing he'll be leaving terrestrial radio in 15 months to join the rival satellite company, Sirius. Because now he's ready to fire back at Opie and Anthony, and he wants to do it no holds barred. Stuck at FM's K-Rock Radio until his contract expires, Howard spends his final months on terrestrial radio taunting the FCC. So basically he's like, I'm going to make the FCC as miserable as possible. I'm going out with a bang, and then I'm going to Sirius where I can do whatever the fuck I want. Now, as for Opie and Anthony, Howard's imminent arrival on satellite encouraged them to get an early start on the all-out, no-holds-barred war to come. In the early 2000s, Howard Stern's divorce from his wife, Allison, is generating media headlines. So for those of you that saw the movie Private Parts, we talked about it last week, Allison was Howard Stern's first wife, the one that was with him through all this ordeal. They're now getting divorced, and they've since been divorced. But just as Howard ridiculed John DeBella's divorce 10 years earlier, Howard's current rivals, Opie and Anthony, gleefully mock his marital issues. So now this is karma coming back to Howard again. Because keep in mind, Don Imus was fucking with Howard, and Howard fired back to the point where Don got butthurt. Opie and Anthony did the same thing to Howard to where he got butthurt, so karma came for Howard. Now it's coming again because remember last week, the way he treated John DeBella's divorce. He had his wife on the show. He had her like trying to hook up with people. He was like fondling her on the air, and then eventually she committed suicide.
Yeah.
He basically buried John DeBella and ruined his career and his life. Well, now Howard is experiencing karma again, courtesy of Opie and Anthony. So the John DeBellas of the world, the guys like him and Mark and Brian and all the people, with the exception of Mancow, of course, that Howard Stern wiped off the earth and fucked with, Opie and Anthony is basically their spokesman. They're now getting to Howard and representing them. So they're cheering Opie and Anthony on, like, get that motherfucker. And they do, because here's some more shit they say. What a treat that must have been to live with Howard Stern for Allison. Whatever money she got, it probably wasn't enough to live with that. So that was another shot they fired. And with his move to satellite approaching, Howard's quietly dating model Beth Ostrovsky, who's 18 years his junior. So he's dating this younger girl named Beth. I think him and Beth are still together. I can't remember if they got married or not. Eventually, the couple talks publicly about their relationship. And basically, it's all about Howard. They watch the shows he wants to watch, and he dictates what time they eat and sleep and wake up in the morning. Which, on the one hand, sounds very controlling. But on the other hand, when Howard does have a morning show and he has to keep to a schedule, I guess I can understand them dictating eat, sleep, and wake up in the morning. But the shows they watch, it's like, come on, dude. Beth says, I love it. It's my life. But it's also something Opie and Anthony can't stop talking about. Because they fire back with, all it showed me when I found the details was Daddy should have spent a little more time. He's too busy walking to Vince and Eddie's with his hot new girlfriend, with your tiny little rat dog. I've never seen a bigger dick in my life. A 6'6" guy walking a rat dog. As for Howard, with huge financial incentives to make his switch to Sirius a success, he's focused on promoting his show, including with Katie Couric. Now, here's a part here where I'm about to say some shit. The team was loyal to Howard and wanted to make the show the best it could possibly be. But not all of Howard's longtime staff members will be joining him at Sirius, because despite his show's phenomenal success, they say Howard hasn't shared the wealth.
Really?
Yeah. Now, the show was making millions of dollars. Howard and Robin got the biggest pieces of the pie. So most of the money's going to Howard and Robin, and the rest of the people got crumbs. For example, Stuttering John was making 20 grand a year. Baba Booey was making 30 grand a year. And Steve Grillo was making nothing. The show's making millions of dollars. He's not making anything. Now, 6 years in, they eventually start paying him minimum wage. So he's making minimum wage, which obviously back then was not a lot. Because today the minimum wage is like 15 an hour, depending on where you work. Sometimes it can be 18, whatever, because the minimum wage has gone up in recent years.
Right.
But back then, it was like $5-6 an hour. And I know that. When I worked at Six Flags, I was making $6.20 an hour working at Six Flags. Keep in mind, I was 14, so it's not like I was paying mortgages and shit. But still, he asked for a raise so he could qualify for health insurance, because Steve knew if I make some more money, I can at least get some health insurance. So let me get a little bit of a bump in pay. But they would only give him 20% raise, which meant he was going to make $7.10 an hour. He went to Howard and said, hey, man, Tom's not going to give me a raise. And he's like going to Howard like, hey, can you help me get this raise? Come help me out, man. And Howard said, well, that's just Tom. And Steve felt betrayed that Howard wouldn't stand up for him. He's like, after everything I've done for you, after all I've been a part of the show, you're not going to stand up for me? And that's when he quit the show, because he realized Howard doesn't have my back. And Howard's response to this, when Steve Grillo quit, this is what Howard said on the air. Good luck to you out there in the cold, cruel world. You're going to need it. You have a very low IQ, and I know that's tough out there. And that's where I want to say, fuck you to Howard Stern. Fuck you. Because that is something that absolutely makes me sick about rich people or successful people, is when you don't take care of people who are loyal to you. Because Howard's reputation for years, even in Private Parts, they talked about it. They say Howard was loyal to every person he ever worked with. Like when Robin got fired, he did all these antics to make sure he could get enough pull to get Robin back on the air. When he went to Hartford and was able to get some pull, he brought in Fred. Like he brought in all these people. But now when it comes time to stand up for your people, you won't do it. And that's why I've always respected Larry Wax. Like there are people that gave Larry a lot of shit during his time on the Regular Guys show. People love him or they hate him. And everybody has their opinion. And I've always said this. The only thing I can judge about Larry is I've known Larry since 2010. Anything he did before that, I wasn't there for. So I can't judge that. And I said, some people have had different experiences with Larry. You are entitled to your opinion of him. But if you want my opinion of him, here it is. Larry Wax, the reason I respect it is for two reasons. One, he put me on the map. Without Larry Wax, there is no Vinny Bucci. If you did a Kevin Bacon 6 degrees of separation of every accomplishment I have made in my career from 2010 till now, Larry is the Kevin Bacon. He's either directly or indirectly responsible for all the success that I have achieved. That's number one. Number two, he always stood up for me. He did. Now, there were a couple things Larry did that upset me. We butted heads, but when you're with somebody for 4 years, not every day is going to be paradise. So there were a couple times where Larry might have crossed the line and upset me a little bit. But overall, the overall 4 years that I was there, Larry always stood up for me. Because there were people behind the scenes who wanted me gone a long time ago. I'll even say his name. Seabass wanted me gone. He and I butted heads the entire time I was fucking there. And he was one of the guys begging to get me off that show. And there were people that were haters of mine that said, I should be gone. I have nothing left to give. The Booch thing ran its course, all that shit. And Larry said, no, fuck y'all. I hired him. I'll decide when the run is over. Larry said there's only one person that can fire Vinny Bucci from this show, and that's me. And Larry always stood up for me to the point where when he got back on the air at 12:30 The Fan 2 and got his sports show, he called me and we went out to Egg Harbor Cafe, sat down and had breakfast together. And he pitched the idea of me coming in to do combat sports and cover that for the show, do wrestling talk and boxing and MMA. I covered UFC fights. I covered wrestling pay-per-views. I would have covered the Mayweather-McGregor boxing match, but the only reason I didn't was because I had jury duty, so I couldn't actually cover the boxing. I couldn't even call into the show because I was in the courtroom while the show was on the air.
Were the beautiful women in the jury room with you?
No, most of them were old and decrepit.
Oh, that got my boner down to a regular sized dick now.
Cool. So my point is, Larry stood up for me. And that's why I got fired the week after Larry did. Larry got fired on December 5th of 2014. December 11th, I got the call saying I was let go. And that's because around that time, Seabass became the producer of the show. So when Larry left, Seabass got into power. So when he got into power, he was able to grant his wish and get rid of me. And that's why even to this day, I still have hatred for Seabass. Now, he used to be number 1 on my list, but now he's down to number 3. But to this day, I still hate him.
So after Larry left, who was there on the show afterwards?
It was Steve and Tim.
Oh.
And then eventually Jason Bailey came in and they had Bailey and Southside, which ran for a while. And eventually Tim ended up leaving that show. And then he got recruited by Eric because Eric Von Hessler, he was fired the year before in 2013. Now Eric and Tim are at WSB. Larry's working as a mortgage broker. And Steve is now on My Fox FM doing the Southside Ride. But during that time, I was let go. But Larry always stood up for me. The two people that stood up for me the most on that show were Larry Wax and Tim Andrews. They stood up for me the most. Now, in the present day, I get along with all 4 regular guys. Southside Gabe, I still get along with him. Eric Von Hessler, we're cool now. Seabass is the only one I haven't buried the hatchet with. And it would take a lot to get me to bury the hatchet with him. Because I still carry that grudge to this day.
So if you had a boat right now, right? And you can actually kick him off the ship, Seabass. You would just let him out to sea and just let him eat bass.
I would have him kiss my bass and then kick him out to sea.
All right. Yes. I want to see that.
Like I said, he used to be number 1 on my list, but he's dropped to number 3 because I met 2 other people in this world who are bigger scumbags than he could ever be because they did worse things to me than Seabass did. But I'm just saying, Larry always stood up for me, and that's why I respect him. Because I'll even tell this story real quick. When we were at the Fan 2, he was trying to get me a part-time board operator job at the place. He was trying to get me a job because he knew I wanted to get out of retail. And we were in the process of making that happen before we got taken off the air. Because we got on the air in July of 2017. By November, the show got pulled. But if the show hadn't gotten pulled, he was going to have me be part of that. Howard's also coldly indifferent when one of his longtime collaborators decides to leave after failing to get a raise he believes he's earned. Howard said, Jackie Martling has left the show. He has walked out, much to my chagrin. After 15 years, out of all of us, he's the only guy who can't figure out how to get a new contract without walking out. So now Jackie the Joke Man Martling, who was also, as you mentioned, another loyal man to Howard Stern for many years, he finally walks out because, again, he's not getting the money that he wants to make. Because, again, the Howard Stern show is making millions of dollars. And they're looking at Howard like, hey, man, they're giving you all this millions of dollars.
Right.
Give us a cut for all the loyalty that we have. But they're telling him to, like, go negotiate a contract with Sirius. It's like, dude, they're giving you the money. We're not asking for an insane amount. We're just asking you to take care of the guys who are taking care of you. And Jackie tries to leave. So now Jackie's out the door. Then we get to the pettiest moment of the whole damn thing. The man that I told you I met briefly, Stuttering John. Now, as we mentioned, Stuttering John was making like 20 grand a year.
Mm-hmm.
Towards the end, he's making $75,000 to $85,000 a year after 15 years. So after 15 years of being on the show, his bump in pay went from 20 grand, 75, 85. Now, I can't speak for Stuttering John, but me personally, to a degree, I'd be okay with the 75, 85 grand.
Yeah.
But that's just me. Now, eventually, over time, I might want a bit of a raise, but 85 grand is not going to be enough to make me angry or pissed off, even after 15 years. And I'll tell you why. Because I know what it's like to work shitty jobs. That's why if you ever see me on a Hollywood set, if you ever see me in a major sitcom, obviously I want to be paid a fair amount of money.
Mm-hmm.
I want to make the money that I believe I should make, but I'm going to be the one guy who I might ask for a raise when the time is right, but you're never going to hear me. If I'm making 80 grand an episode, you're not going to hear me bitch and complain. You're not going to hear me on a movie set being angry over petty shit. You're not going to see me losing my mind. And that's because I know what it's like to work 9 to 5.
Because we're doing drugs right now. I'm doing drugs. I'm having poppy seeds.
Yeah, from a fucking bagel.
No. It's from a Kaiser roll that looks like the size of Janet Jackson's bosom.
Okay, whatever. He eventually leaves to go work for Jay Leno at The Tonight Show. And his pay for The Tonight Show is $350,000 to $400,000 a year.
Wow.
Now, with all due respect to Howard Stern, you can't be mad at Stuttering John for taking that job.
You can't.
He's making 85 grand over here. Somebody offers him 400 grand. Unless you're going to counter offer, which you know Howard can do. And we're going to get to why he can do that in a moment. But like we said, the show makes millions of dollars. You can afford to at least match the offer. At least match it. Maybe bump it up a little bit. And who knows, if Howard had done that, maybe John would have stayed.
I did not know he was on The Tonight Show.
Well, he was a writer on The Tonight Show.
Oh.
Like, he wasn't necessarily on TV a lot, but he was a writer. Like, he got to do writing and do bits and stuff because he did so much stuff for Howard for years. So he had the experience. But instead of wishing him luck, John's last appearance on the show was spent listening to Howard take credit for all of John's success. Basically said if it wasn't for Howard, Jay would have never hired him. And he says he's a traitor and he's dead to him.
Really?
And it turns out the reason is because Howard Stern loathes, despises Jay Leno.
Yes.
Hates his guts.
Yes, because him and David Letterman are friends. When David Letterman had Howard Stern as a guest, they both bashed Jay Leno.
Yes, and that's also because, like, Howard Stern claims that Jay Leno stole bits from Howard's show. That's one reason. The other reason is David Letterman and also what he did to Conan when Conan O'Brien was taking over the Tonight Show and Jay Leno sabotaged that with his 10 o'clock show and they wanted to get the Tonight Show back to Jay Leno. He gives it to Conan and then takes it back, which I hated that. See, this is how fucked up Howard is. This is how fucked up a lot of people are. There's a fine line between loyalty and being toxic. And people understand this. Again, Stuttering John is on the Howard Stern show, making $75,000 to $85,000 a year.
Right.
You got Jay Leno, who's going to pay him $350,000 to $400,000 a year. And Stuttering John, at this point, has a family. He's married, he's got kids. So if you're so fucking petty and you're so fucking delusional that you think, oh, this guy's so loyal to me, he's gonna turn down $400,000 a year and stay here and keep making 85 grand, you're a toxic piece of shit. Here's a bright idea. You want him to stay? Give him a fucking raise. Mm-hmm. That's what you do. But that's how fucked up people are. They expect you to be loyal to them even when you're treating them like shit. That's a toxic person. And I know, because I worked for a toxic person in the wrestling business. Side note, it's that guy shot up to number 1 on my shit list. Like I said, when Seabass dropped to 3, the promoter I worked for shot up to number 1 because he was toxic like this. By contrast, Howard's final K-Rock show is a glitzy celebrity send-off. After Howard's final words, he makes a triumphant walk from his former terrestrial home to his new studio at Sirius. But he's met by legions of disruptive Opie and Anthony fans. They were chanting O and A, and they call themselves the Pests, as they had been disrupting media events all across New York City. So as he's walking to Sirius, the Opie and Anthony fans are harassing him and coming out in drones and wearing the WOW stickers. Like, they're really sticking it to Howard Stern. And then on January 9th, 2006, Mr. Sulu, good old George Takei, joins the show, and he makes the announcement, and Howard is officially on air at Sirius. And this is what he says. He goes, "And now, free from terrestrial radio, no more bullshit, Howard Stern." And that's the announcement from George Takei, who became a regular on the show for quite some time. So George Takei ended up joining the show as well. And then, of course, Artie Lang would join the show later, who we'll be talking about on Darkside of Comedy. Now, once again, Opie and Anthony intrude in Howard's moment by goofing on their one-time role model's satellite debut. This time, Howard responds to the duo's ridicule. So now Howard's firing back. And he says, "It's so funny. We were doing our farewell show. I felt bad for Opie and Anthony. They're so desperate to be famous. 10 or 20 fans show up with signs." Now, Opie and Anthony respond by saying that those fans got to him, but was hard to tell because he's had a facelift. So now they're making fun of Howard and everything. But Howard gets the last laugh. And this goes back to what I was saying before about spreading the wealth. Millions of his fans subscribe to Sirius to experience the uncensored king of all media, because they've seen how crazy Howard got on FCC regulated radio. So now there's no rules and no censorship. Everybody wants to see what Howard's going to do next. So he's now making $500 million. $500 million. You're telling me with $500 million, you can't take care of your team? Even if you gave them all $1 million, you still got money in the bank. Fuck, you can give them all $10 million a year. You still got money in the bank. $500 million? That's why I can't respect Howard Stern. How do you make $500 million and you're going to pay somebody 85 grand a year that's been with you for 15 years? I mean, Jesus Christ.
Somehow, his shrewd business tactics, he's still on top today.
Yeah, and Tim Sabian said he was underpaid, and I want to punch Tim in the face for saying that. Like, as soon as I heard Tim Sabian say that he felt he was underpaid, motherfuckers making $500 million, they're like, he's underpaid. It's like, fuck you. This is why poor people or middle-class people want rich people to die. This is why when rich people have problems, the working class doesn't give a fuck, because we hear stupid shit like this. $500 million and you're underpaid. Suck my massive 12-inch cock. Okay? Give me $500 million. You'll never see my fat ass again.
The thing is, what we're doing, we do a lot of good broadcasts. We deserve as much as even more than Howard Stern.
Well, yeah, because we would know what to do with that money. I would take care of my team. You would take care of your team.
Well, you're part of my team, too.
True, but I'm saying, like, obviously, if you got $500 million and I didn't, obviously, I would expect you to share the wealth. But if we each got $500 million, you wouldn't have to give me as much as you would the other people, because I have $500 million.
Here's how I divide up. If I got $500 million, Dylan would get $20 million, Evans would get $20 million, and you would get $5 million.
If I also have $500 million, I'll happily take that $5 million. But if I'm still working class and those two get 20 and I get 5, I'm strangling you. Because I've been with you longer than them. If they're getting 20, I'm getting 40. Melissa should get 40.
Exactly.
Because we've been there longer. Maybe Melissa might get 50. I don't know. How long have you known Melissa before me?
Around the same time.
Okay, then we would both get 40. Okay, because if you had met her like a year or two before, I might have let her get 50. But like if we met at the same time, I would say if Evans and Dylan are getting 20, Melissa and I need to get 40.
No.
We've been around longer.
I would divide up more than that with Dylan.
With all due respect to them, seniority.
Yes.
I'm pulling the seniority card when it comes to getting paid, all right? Fucking, I should be making more than them.
Yes.
Because I've been through more shit. For my team, I would probably I got 500 million. I'm probably giving 30 million to Zach, 30 for Desmond, 30 for Elvis. If I can get John and Rhiannon to come back, 30. If I brought Gator back, I don't know how much he would get.
$2 and a bag of shit?
No, not a bag of shit. I don't know if I would put his salary in the millions though. Because he's no-showed a lot during the last run and he did cause a lot of edgy, controversial moments. So his would probably be like a couple 100,000.
I believe that he polluted your show.
You wouldn't be the only one that said that. But yeah, so that's probably how I divide it up. And I'm just giving a low number for now. Obviously, they would get raises over time, depending on what they contribute to the show. But I would want to give the team enough money because 500 million to me is fuck you money. So if I get fuck you money, I would want to give them enough fuck you money to where they would be okay coming on the show and saying what they want to say and let's having real discussions. So that's why I would definitely share the wealth with my team and try to bring most of my team back. Now, the television show is now also uncensored. So Howard TV is about to be uncensored in addition to everything else. And they used to blur the nudity. Now they don't. Now you see all the nakedness, whether it's a naked girl or a naked guy, it's all visible. And now broadcasting on the Anything Goes world of satellite radio, Howard's libido is completely unleashed. And he's about to shock and awe America with his most outrageous stunt yet, the Sibian Talent Contest. Now, Howard Stern's new unregulated and uncensored show on satellite radio and on-demand TV allowed him to introduce the world to something called the Sibian Machine. Now, for those that don't know what the Sibian Machine was, it was a vibrating seat designed to give women orgasms. So it's a chair with a vibrator on it, button you press or whatever, and it's designed to give women orgasms. Now, this chair doesn't exist anymore, but for a period of time it did, unless somebody decides to resurrect it and sell it online. But on terrestrial radio, it was done like theater of the mind. Now it was just happening. So before, Howard would describe the sexual stuff that's happening, and he would do it in a tasteful way on terrestrial radio. Well, now it's not done tastefully anymore. It's like the difference between softcore porn and hardcore porn. Now it's hardcore. And Mancow, despite his hatred for Stern, even says the line between funny and offensive is not for any one person to decide. You don't get to decide the difference between funny and offensive for everybody. You can only decide it for yourself. And this is why I respect Mancow. Because despite the fact that he hates Howard Stern and wants him to burn in hell, he still respects Howard's right to freedom of speech. Because freedom of speech, and even I've heard D.L. Hughley say this, the thing about freedom of speech is sometimes you'll hear stuff that even you don't like. Because the reason the First Amendment was created was to protect unpopular speech. Because popular speech doesn't need to be protected. It's to protect unpopular speech. And if people want to listen to it, they should be allowed to. That's the thing. It's a freedom of choice. You as the viewer, as the listener, you get to decide whether or not you want to listen to this. And if you have children, you get to decide whether to listen to this. That's why I believe we should bring back parental control settings. I am all for that on streaming services. So you as the parent can decide, I don't want my child to see this, because I believe parents should make the decision for their own kid. You should say, I find this offensive. I'm going to put these blocks on so my kid can't watch this, instead of going, I find this offensive. I want you to remove this from Netflix and Hulu. No, fuck you. You should block it. Just don't watch it. Just because you don't like it doesn't mean somebody else is not going to want to watch this. So fuck your feelings.
Just like Sean Hannity stuck up for Whoopi Goldberg, right? Your favorite person. Talking about canceling. You shouldn't cancel anybody.
Well, to me, it depends on context. For example, Kathy Griffin and Bill Cosby both deserve to be canceled.
Bill Cosby?
Yeah.
No.
The dude who went to jail for rape? Yeah. Cancel his ass.
I think he got wrongly accused.
Some of the women were lying, but most of them weren't. That's the thing. There were a couple liars because it came out they were lying, but there were some women that were telling the truth. The evidence came out, and then he went to jail.
I think they embellished the truth. I think like Matt Lauer.
Well, we already talked about Matt Lauer's thing and how creepy he was.
I had to say that a lot of people get wrongly accused.
Well, there's plenty of people, and I've defended the ones that were wrongfully accused. But if it comes out that they did it, that's different. Like, I defended Bill Cosby until it was revealed that he did it. I did the same thing with Danny Masterson until it was revealed that he did it. I was defending both those guys. But then once they got convicted and the evidence came out and it was overwhelming, it's like, okay, I can't defend this shit no more. They were right, I was wrong. But there's times where I was right and they were wrong, where people did lie and it did reveal that they lied, like with Matt Riddle and Enzo Amore. They were accused of sexual assault. We found out the ladies that accused them were lying through their teeth.
Well, here's the thing. I can tell something about Matt Lauer was fabricated because Matt Lauer is still friends with his ex-wife because of the children, okay? The thing is, if he was that monster, I think his ex-wife would not still be kind of friendly with him.
Either that or she doesn't believe the story. I'm just saying, it could be one of two things. I don't know. Either way, the whole point of it is I'm saying is it's all about you should have the right to parentally control your own TV, but you don't get to cancel stuff because you don't like it. Because if you're going to have free speech, you have to have things that are ugly. And the government has no right to tell people to turn it off or stop.
So you agree that Whoopi Goldberg should still have a job at The View?
And there's a lot of things I like about Whoopi. I hate Joy Behar maybe more than I hate Whoopi. But obviously they have the right to freedom of speech.
Right.
I just feel like their show should be canceled because I believe they put out a lot of fake news and they have a lot of bullshit propaganda. So I personally don't like their fucking show. But they have a right to say what they think. What they don't have the right to do is spread lies and fucking bullshit and call yourself a credible talk show.
I would say even in his heyday, the talk radio of Shock Jock, the late Rush Limbaugh, was up on your show, right?
Yeah, we did Darkside of the 90s on him.
Rush Limbaugh had an agenda on the right side.
Yeah.
I think Whoopi's sometimes too liberal. Rush was too conservative.
Yeah. The difference is that Rush Limbaugh was more comedic in what he said. Like, he was going a lot for laughs and stuff. Whoopi, when it comes to politics, she's not going for laughs. She's going for taking your opinion, shoving it down your throat, and shaming you for not agreeing with her. Although, at least Whoopi Goldberg is easier to talk to, though, than Joy Behar. Joy Behar should be fired. I think she's the cancer of that show.
Joy Behar's a comedian, too.
She has no right to call herself that. She's a disgrace to the profession. She's a disgrace to comedians everywhere because she's one of the leading causes of cancel culture and the woke thing. And any comedian that endorses woke cancel culture is not a comedian. You have no right to call yourself that. You're a wolf in sheep's clothing.
So someone offered you $10 million to open up for Joy Behar, and Joy Behar's getting $20 million, you're getting $10 million.
For $10 million, I would be Bill Maher's butler. Okay, for $10 million, open for Joy. Yeah, give me the money. All I gotta do is go on stage, do my set. Thank you very much. Give me my $10 million. I walk out the door. I ain't gotta be friends with Joy.
For extra $5 million, you have to French kiss Joy Behar.
I kissed Larry Wax for free. I'll fucking French kiss Joy. $10 million? Okay.
Extra $5 million, you do a porno with Joy Behar.
Do you have Viagra? Because I ain't getting hard naturally for this. I'm going to need all the Viagra you can get. I can't look at Joy Behar and get a hard on. That's the difference between guys and saying, oh, you're going to do a porn. Because the dick don't lie. That's why it's hard for guys to marry a woman just for her money. Because your cock won't let you fuck a girl who's ugly. If you're not attracted to somebody, you're not going to get hard unless you have Viagra. So I'm saying, if you got Viagra nearby, I'll take the pill. My dick will get hard, and I'll fuck Joy Behar for $20 million. Like, okay.
I'll tell you this much. The lady who I brought down to Atlanta was on your show, right? I couldn't get my dick up with her. My ex-girlfriend who I'm speaking to, she could just get my dick up with just me speaking to her.
Howard TV was made for adult men. They were also professionals. Once they went off the air, they would wrap a towel around the naked guests and give them back their clothes. So they were only degrading when the cameras were on. They were doing their bits and being funny. But once they were off the air, it's like, okay, we're going to take care of everybody here. Let's treat this like a professional set. So they weren't complete pigs. Now, Howard knew everything gets shown world doesn't stop young women from risking public humiliation. Some women came on because they thought they would get fame. In hindsight, most of them should have said no. And that's another misconception. Because a lot of people think, oh, I'm going to get famous. Oh, I'm going to get popular. You're only going to be popular for a short while. Because unless you're a regular on the show, you're not going to get fame for making a one-time appearance. They're going to forget about you the next week because they're moving on to the next bits and segments and everything else. You got to be a series regular to get popular. Like, I got famous on the regular guys because I was there every week. If I had just shown up once or twice, nobody would have remembered me after a month. But because I was a regular for 4 years, Regular Guys fans still know who I am. So that's how I got to that point. Now, Howard helped Sirius gain on XM and the subscriber race, but both companies are losing money from the costs of launching satellites, expensive programming, and competition from other media, including internet, podcasts, and smartphones. So now with the podcast world rising up, because podcasts become a new millennium phenomenon, so now Opie and Anthony, like Howard, fight for listeners by getting louder. Opie and Anthony even tried growing their audience by simultaneously casting the first 3 hours of their satellite show from Howard's old terrestrial station, K-Rock. So they would do K-Rock in the morning and then walk over to their studio in XM and they would broadcast the walkover. But their walkovers attract a crowd, and now it's Opie and Anthony coming face to face with Howard's fans. One guy makes threats and a bodyguard takes him down and chokes him out while Opie trash talks him, which I thought was funny.
Right.
That's a fuck around and find out situation right there. So while Howard's fans take shots at Opie and Anthony take their own against the most vulnerable targets they encounter on the streets. They would interview homeless Andrew. He shows him a cake and he offers him a piece. But then Opie stomps on the cake and they laugh at him while he says, "I earned that." Which that's a dick move right there.
Right.
I mean, now at this point, you're not being funny. You're just being an asshole.
Right.
This homeless guy's not a dick. He didn't do anything to deserve that. It's not a stupid thing to do. Now, people saw it as a reason to get them fired, but they didn't fire him over it. But there is a line, as one of radio's original shock jocks, Don Imus, discovers when he calls the Rutgers women's basketball team nappy-headed hoes. So that whole incident, as we talked a little bit about last week. Now, Don Imus is under fire, and Howard Stern and Robin Quivers pile on it by accusing Don Imus of using the N-word a lot. But Opie and Anthony defend Don Imus. Now, Imus gets fired with full pay, and then he was hired with a bonus from the competition, and all was forgotten. So Imus eventually got rehired, but not quite. The Imus firing is a warning shot to Shock Jock Radio. Now, this is when Shock Jock Radio is on the decline. And when Opie and Anthony invite a different homeless man on their show, they now have consequences. Because in their never-ending quest to grow their satellite radio audience by pushing boundaries, Opie and Anthony bring a man they call Homeless Charlie on their show. And he goes on a rant, and I'm going to preface this as Homeless Charlie saying this, not me. He talks about how some Jew motherfuckers kicked him out of his house. He wants to rape and beat Condoleezza Rice. And he said he would fuck Laura Bush to death.
Who's
Now,
this? Who said that?
Homeless Charlie is on there saying this on Opie and Anthony's show.
Wow.
And they thought it was hilarious, and they're laughing, and they're egging it on. Now, in the aftermath of the Don Imus firing, even Opie and Anthony suspect they may have gone too far, and they're right to be worried because XM suspends the duo following their half-hearted apology. So they give a half-ass apology, and XM suspends them. So the place that talks about no censorship is now suspending people. Keep that in mind. Now, after their suspension, Opie and Anthony return to the airwaves unrepentant. But not all publicity is good publicity. After suspension, the ratings in New York City take a big hit. Just as there's a seismic shift happening in the world of satellite radio. Now, Sirius and XM are each facing bankruptcy, and due to their massive debt, they decide to combine forces. So now the companies are merging together to form Sirius XM, which means Opie, Anthony, and Jim Norton now are in the same studio as Howard Stern. So now they're all in the same building again. And testy contract negotiations with their new Sirius XM bosses causes a contentious personal relationship that Opie and Anthony have endured since the late 90s to finally boil over. So now they're button heads on the air, and Jim Norton can't do shit to stop it. As Opie and Anthony argue their way into the 2010s, Howard Stern responds to the changing culture with changes of his own. He started to evolve and tone down the show, and the nudity as the culture was no longer as receptive to it. So now Howard is changing his tune because he realizes this shit ain't working anymore, which the regular guys did the same towards the end because they realized the shock jock world wasn't working. However, in a staff meeting leaked online, Stern affirms his decision to prioritize celebrity interviews over sex stunts. Most fans walked away because they don't recognize the show anymore, and it's become unlistenable to them. That's the price. Because you got some fans who are still loyal to the shock jock world and don't want to grow up.
Mm-hmm.
And they walk away when they see the guys like, okay, we got to change with the changing culture a little bit. Now, Howard faces even more accusations that he's becoming everything he used to ridicule when he's named an America's Got Talent judge. So now people see Howard as a sellout. And he is. All the stuff that Howard used to shit on, he now is embracing because he desperately wants to be loved and accepted by the celebrities he once lampooned. And he credits a decade of psychotherapy for his kinder, gentler approach. Now, Stuttering John's problem is that he makes amends with all these celebrities that he fucked around with, but he never makes amends with John or Artie or Jackie or Grillo. So it's like you say you changed, but you don't make amends to the people that were loyal to you that you shit upon, which I agree with. It's easy to apologize to a bunch of fucking celebrities who will kiss your ass and suck your dick as long as they can get publicity. But again, Howard is not taking care of the people who took care of him and helped him grow. And that's why Howard also doesn't have a lot of respect. Now, while Howard runs away from his past, Opie and Anthony continue with their repartee of cruelty. They hold a fatty pig fatty contest, but what draws the most negative attention is Anthony's inflammatory comments about race in America. He says he uses the N-word and doesn't give a fuck. He also said he has no white guilt in him. Now, obviously, the N-word is a bit much, but I do agree with the fact that he has no white guilt. Because if you have white guilt in 2024, you need to see a therapist because you're broken.
Who said this? Howard?
No, Anthony from Opie and Anthony says he has no white guilt in him. I have no white guilt in me because I didn't do anything wrong. If you have white guilt, that means you got some skeletons in your closet. That's your guilt, not my guilt. Now, Anthony's race and sensitivities go back to an early 90s video for his band Rock Gut, where he portrays OJ in full blackface. Howard Stern has his own racist sketches to live down when a video from the early 90s surfaces online. So he's also in blackface. Now, while Howard claims he has evolved, Anthony proudly makes it clear that he has not. Now, early in the morning in 2014 in Manhattan, Anthony was taking pictures with his camera and he decided to take a picture and a black woman was caught in the frame. She thought that he was taking a picture of her and she started punching him. He didn't hit her back or pull his gun that he carries on him legally. So Anthony goes home and he goes on a Twitter rant on a racist tirade, and it was one racist tweet after another. Everyone woke up to like 58 tweets. And what was funny was people focused more on the fact that he's making racist statements and less on the fact that he behaved non-violently to a violent situation, which I think is fucked up. He had every right to hit this woman because she was attacking him. Also, he has a legal conceal and carry license, so at the very least, he could have shot her in the leg or something and would have been well within his rights to do it, but didn't do either one of those things. Instead, what does he do? He goes home and goes on Twitter. The most non-violent thing you could do. So now, here are the tweets. These are quoting here. These are the tweets that Anthony put out that got him fired.
Okay.
The first is, I'm fucking livid. If I was an illegal savage, I'd have shot her. The IR violence in her was so predictable. I hope she gets killed. That's the first tweet. Tweet number 2. Then she punched me 5 more times. She's lucky I was a white legal gun owner or she'd be dead. Then 5 blacks start giving me shit. Tweet number 3. So I'm taking pics in New York City and a black girl who was in frame punched me in the face. I called her a fucking cunt because that's what she was. Tweet number 4. Savage, violent animal prey on white people. Easy targets. This cunt has no clue how lucky she was. She belted me 10 times. I had a gun. Tweet number 5. Great pic of the rag bitch animal pig face worthless meat sack shit pile stink crotch ass stain rot bung. The last tweet. They aren't people. So those are the tweets that Anthony Cumia put out that he said in response to getting the crap beat out of him. Now, SiriusXM responds to the backlash by firing Anthony Cumia. Anthony's racist tweets after allegedly being assaulted in Times Square by a black woman are the final straw for SiriusXM. So again, the place that is saying no censorship, go wild, now they're starting to not be wild anymore. Now, instead of apologizing, Anthony defends himself on a podcast by Gavin Micken, the founder of the alt-right neo-fascist group, the Proud Boys. After Anthony's firing, Opie is contractually obligated to continue the show with Jim Norton. So it now becomes the Opie and Jim show. But Opie will soon be in trouble for complaining about being locked out of the SiriusXM offices by Howard Stern, who demands the right to privately walk the halls every morning. So basically, Opie puts out a video on his phone, like a live stream, talking about the fact that he can't get into his studio because Howard has the whole floor blocked off. And yeah, Howard Stern being a diva, shocker. But for posting his exploits online, including him trespassing in Howard's office and other alleged transgressions, SiriusXM eventually fires Opie because apparently he filmed a producer taking a shit as well, and that caused some things. Now, Opie's old partner, Anthony Cumia, finds himself in even more trouble when he's accused of domestic violence. A year after his firing, Cumia's much younger girlfriend live streams from his house while he assaults her. He's drunk and looking for his gun. He gets arrested for strangulation and biting his girlfriend. He then starts posting pictures of Stuttering John's transgender child. So now Anthony's gone off the deep end. While Opie and Anthony each flounder after their breakup, their nemesis continues to prosper. Now the most shocking thing about Howard Stern is his transformation. Howard's celebrity apology tour includes David Letterman, of course, but not everyone thinks Howard has paid for his past sins. Again, this is Howard Stern trying to say that he's a changed man. And all the shock jocks who once ruled the FM dial are now relegated to satellite radio, internet shows, and podcasts. Opie has a podcast and a YouTube channel. Most of his YouTube videos don't even break 1,000 views. Anthony has his own show, and a few weeks ago, he called a black woman the N-word, so he hasn't changed. Most people don't think in today's climate that Shock Jock Radio could exist again, and it's probably for the best. I don't know, Derek, do you think it's for the best?
No.
You think Shock Jock Radio should still exist?
Yes.
Why?
Because we need more entertainment value. Now, Shock Jock's not for everybody, but should they be canceled? No.
I'm all for edgy television, but I like edgy stuff that's done in good taste. Where like when people do controversial jokes, I look at the context in which the joke is told.
Well,
and if it's funny, and if it's clearly funny and doesn't have malicious intent, then I go with it. But if it does have malicious intent, that's the problem. Like, for example, on the regular guys, all the crazy stunts that I did, not all of them have malicious intent behind them. Some of them I enjoyed doing. Some of them I wish we never did. And some of them were embarrassing for me. Like, I'll be honest, there were some times I left that studio emotionally fucked up. But I don't regret it, and I'll tell you why. Because it gave me the thick skin that I have today. The embarrassing shit that I went through on the regular guys, it is impossible to humiliate me today. Now, there are still been times where I've taken humiliation and emotional hits, but they were strong hits. Like, that's why, like, if somebody wants to make fun of me by calling me fat, is that all you got? Like, if your only insult to me is that I'm fat and I have 2 chins, like, get better jokes, you weak fuck. Because let me tell you something. If I want to savagely go after somebody, I don't need to make fun of the fact that you're fat. I can come up with 100 fucking things to say about a person. And I'll go for the fucking jugular. Again, you just got to be able to do things in good taste and make sure everybody's okay with something. Like, that's the problem, is sometimes shock jocks were so obsessed with the shock value that they didn't take into account whether or not the person was comfortable with the situation or whether or not this is really going to work. They just wanted to spark outrage and then got mad when the outrage came. Like, if your goal is to trigger people and piss them off, you can't get mad if they're pissed off because that was your intention. It's like, nothing pisses me off more than someone that goes out into the woods, pokes a bear with a stick, the bear attacks you, and then you play victim. I fucking hate that. Don't start shit if you don't want to suffer the consequences. So if you want to be a shock jock, be a shock jock. You want to be edgy and controversial? Do it. But be willing to accept the consequences for your actions. All right, now, ladies and gentlemen, we'll conclude this recap of Boochcast reviews, Darkside of the 2000s. Derek, thanks for joining me on this episode. And real quick, where can people find you online? Plug all your stuff.
Well, you can find me at DerekShapiro'S.com and, of course, DSSTVStation.com, where the Boochcast is this episode, and countrymusics.yolosay.com, and also on DSS Internet Talk Radio.yolosay.com. And also, don't forget our new movie that's been out since July, No Lips, No Teeth, Chapter 2 on Movie Internet Channel.yolosay.com. But Chapter 3 will be out next year.
All right, make sure you guys tune in next week. Derek will be here as well. We're going to be getting into quite possibly one of the most popular reality shows of all time, but also the most fucked up reality show of all time. Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to be getting into The Bachelor. Every rose has its thorn next week.
Oh my God, I have some connections to that too next week too, Vinny. Don't forget, I actually saw Brett Michaels, who sings Every Rose Has Its Thorn. And I actually interviewed Jared and Ashley from The Bachelor in Paradise, which I think I talked about that next week with you.
Yes, I think we're going to go into that as well. But of course, like I said, we'll be here for The Bachelor next week here on the Boochcast. So make sure you guys follow us on all of our podcast platforms. The link is down in the description box below. Follow us on our social media platforms. That link will be in the description box below. You can also support the Boochcast. Go to podcasters.spotify.com/pod/show/the Boochcast/support. That link will be in the description box below. And of course, as always, hit the subscribe button and ring that bell to be notified so you never miss another episode of Boochcast Reviews Darkside of the 2000s, as well as other additional Boochcast YouTube content. We'll talk to you guys next time. Until then, pizza, baby!
Pizza, baby! With pineapple!
Never.